you who are here during the event and those of you who are tuning in after. A few housekeeping items. We are recording this, and so if you would like to turn your video off, you can do that in the lower bar of your Zoom window towards the left. We have all the participants muted right now, and if you would like to ask a question later, you can unmute yourself at that point. You also are always welcome to type questions into the chat feature as we're going along. This is our first virtual parenting support session. We have a live discussion that we'll be doing every other Monday. Today we'll be focused on routines. We'll be talking about why they're important and how to actually implement them and the ways that they can help us as parents. In our next topic, we'll be talking about power struggles, which even the best routine can get thrown off by big power struggles with our children. And in our third, we'll focus on self-care and routines. We'll also have time to touch on that a bit today as well. My name is Meredith, and I'm a parenting educator at Parenting Now. I facilitate infants, 1s, 2s, and 3s groups. I also do over the phone one-on-one support, and I have a 3-year-old of my own. Allie is here as a parent educator as well. Would you like to introduce yourself, Allie?
Sure. Hi, my name is Allie. I'm an early childhood and parenting educator. I also facilitate infant groups and 1 groups, and I also do the one-to-one phone support. And I have an almost 4-year-old.
Yay. Yes, coming up very soon. Just a whole new adventure. Well, again, thank you all so much for being here. So there's probably been some big changes in your day-to-day routines in the past few months. If these changes have brought on any new added stresses and maybe some unexpected and really sweet moments with your children, know that you are very much not alone. Many of us are in that same boat. So today we'll talk about the difference between a routine and a schedule, and we'll talk about how and why routines can help us. So to start off, a routine is different from a schedule. A schedule will tell us, at this time, do this thing. A routine is not that. A routine's not going to say, oh, it's 2 o'clock, so it's time for a walk. What a routine does provide us is a predictable pattern so that everyone knows what to expect generally throughout the day. When any of us are in a state of constant and perpetual uncertainty, it's harder for us to focus, we're more forgetful, and our brain power takes a nosedive. Does that sound familiar? Again, many of us are in that boat right now, just because of the uncertainty that is taking place in our world. So as humans, our brains are constantly looking for patterns. They're trying to find some order in the chaos, and that allows our brain to focus its energy on thinking, learning, managing emotions. Children's brains are especially wired to seek out these patterns, and our children thrive on predictability. Our children are still developing their executive functions like concentration, memory, emotional regulation, and self-control, all things that we want them to learn, right? That we want to help them learn. And they rely on some routines and predictability to gain all those functions. Again, this doesn't mean that we need to plan every minute of every day. It doesn't mean that we need to worry or panic when something deviates. We can have routines without having rigidity. And so our goal for today is to help you just think a little bit about that and to find maybe some routines that'll make things easier rather than more stressful in your life. Adding a routine should not add more stress, ideally. So let's talk about how to make routines work. First, they have to be doable, right? It needs to be a workable thing. So it can help to start by just thinking, really loosely, what's the general flow of your day? And there might be more predictability there than you actually think or recognize. Sometimes as humans, we look for the things that are going wrong, and sometimes we have to be a little bit purposeful and intentional about looking for the things that are going right. So we want our routines to be doable. We want them to give everyone in the family a sense of when their basic needs will be met. So things like when you get to rest, getting something to eat, and everyone in the family, right? Even busy parents need a time to eat. We all need to know, that we're going to have a chance to have a little alone time if we need it. For adults, it might include time to work. That might be a need that we have during the day. And for our children, it might be a focused time to play. And for all of us, but especially our children, one of our basic needs is a need to connect and to bond with one another. And so ideally in our routine, we want there to be a chance for all of those needs to be met and for people to know, for everyone in the family to know when generally, again, not exactly at 7:30 a.m., but sometime after waking up, when those things will happen. Another thing that can be really helpful is having some rituals to the day, and these are like the anchors. So we all know that even if we have this plan for how the day is going to go, things can throw us, right? And children are great at presenting us with all sorts of really wonderful and surprising, unexpected adventures. And so it can help us to have some anchor points, some touchstones to kind of come back to help ourselves be grounded and settled. And Allie's going to share a little bit about that with us. So Allie, can you talk a little bit about some of the rituals that you work with parents on in your parenting groups?
Sure. And I just want to point out too, just to support what you said, that just keeping it really simple, even just following something that you already have in place that you don't realize that you have in place, following your child's needs. There's probably already a ritual or routine that you're already doing that you don't realize that you're doing. So it's really very, very simple. Like Meredith was saying, it doesn't need to be a schedule. We're going to get up at 7:30. We're going to eat breakfast at 8 o'clock. Keeping it super simple, it's going to make it flow a lot easier. And I also just wanted to add too that we see also that children kind of relax when they have a little routine in place. They, when they know what to expect, then they don't feel as anxious. So putting these little rituals and routines in place really helps your children to feel like they have some kind of power, which helps them to relax, helps them to be more willing to want to go through the routine with you. So it really does end up making it a lot easier on you both. So some examples, some simple examples. Maybe in the morning you wake up, depending on the age of your child. Maybe you nurse right off the bat in the morning. Maybe you bottle feed right off the bat in the morning, depending on the age of your child. Maybe right when you wake up, there's just a diaper change or potty time. That could be the next step. Maybe breakfast could be next. Brushing teeth could be after that. And then play or going to daycare or going to work. That could be the next step. So that's just an example of about 4 things that you can do in the morning that would be considered a ritual or a routine. And you can put those in any order that you want. You can change it up. You can be like, oh, well, my family doesn't nurse right when we wake up, but my 3-year-old is so thirsty right when he wakes up. So we're going to go get a drink of water first thing. I mean, it depends on what your family is doing, what your child is already telling you that works for them. Okay. A lot of people do a morning ritual and then an evening ritual, but maybe your family needs some middle of the day kind of ritual. That's going to be an option for you. Maybe your child is taking naps in the middle of the day. So maybe your ritual during the middle of the day could be we do snack, then we go and have our nap. That's 2 things. Maybe you just have 2 things for the middle of the day for your routine. And then one that is really popular, I believe, with most families is the evening. The evening ritual seems to be the one that people are like, well, if we're going to have a ritual, if we're going to have a routine, it needs to be in the evening. Again, all families are different, so you're just going to make up your routine, what works for you. So an example of an evening ritual may be one of the parents is going to make dinner. So maybe your little one is either playing in the kitchen on the floor with some pots and pans and a little spoon pretending to make dinner with you, or maybe your child is in the other room playing by themselves or playing with your spouse or your partner. So dinner is going to be happening, cooking of dinner. Then after dinner, maybe it's playtime or maybe it's bath time. After that, maybe it's diaper change, potty time. And then after that could be brush teeth or jammies. A lot of times too, if you give your child a choice, do you want to put on your jammies right now, or do you want to brush your teeth right now? Giving them that choice of what you're doing in your little lineup there of your routine helps them to feel like they have some control, and they're going to be more willing to do the routine with you. So you can give them choices. And then maybe the last part of your evening routine is a storybook and snuggles. Maybe it's nursing or bottle feeding. It could be singing or rocking in the chair, rocking chair, and then go to sleep. So those are some little simple examples. And I wanted to show you as well, when my child was about 20 months, I believe, we made her this little visual. She just worked really well off of visuals. And this is something, of course, you do not need to do. Don't stress. You're like, oh no, I need to do a visual. I need to draw. That's definitely optional. I mean, you could take pictures of you all doing these things and put them on a piece of paper. You don't have to do it at all, but it could be something that maybe in the future that you want to do. This was something that we did during our little art time together. So you can see, and it's very crumbled because she was very little when we did this. It's been through a lot.
And well loved.
It's been well loved. This is a little toothbrush. So brush teeth first, jammies next. Bath time was the next one. And this became an option in our family. And I know it becomes an option in a lot of families. Doing bath time every single night isn't realistic for a lot of families. And then after that, back then when she was teeny tiny, it was a little back rub first to help wind her down. And then it was a storybook. And then there's her little potty on the back when we did potty time. Okay, so that's just a simple little visual. And then once she found this little visual that we no longer use, she decided just a few weeks ago that she wanted to make a morning time one. So here's a morning time one. It's a little harder to see, but there's brush teeth first, eat breakfast, go potty. And this is go to preschool or stay home and play because we're in quarantine. Oh wait, we're doing it backwards. Sorry. Getting dressed and then go to preschool. That's important to get dressed before you go to preschool.
Some days, maybe not every day.
And that's true. Some days she went to preschool in her jammies, and that works for families too. But anyway, that's just a little visual. So of course you don't feel like you need to do that, but sometimes a visual really helps with young children. And with my daughter, I'd say, okay, point on the chart, what comes next? And she would point next and say, oh, now it's jammy time. And that just helped her to buy into, okay, this is fun. We're doing this together. And I have a choice in what we're going to do.
Yeah, and it's so nice. That's a really great example of visuals. You know, children are not necessarily remembering all of the steps in order every night, especially if they're really excited. You know, if they're really wound up playing, it can be hard to settle them back down and get them back into that groove. And so having that visual for them to be able to draw their attention is wonderful. And, you know, other ways to do that would be maybe just having them lay out the things with you, you know, so they could pick the jammies and you lay those out on the bed, pick the book that you're reading after, and then, you know, you have those ready to go when you come into the room. And so they say, oh yeah, that's right, I have to put my jammies on, then we can do the book. So you can find lots of ways to give your child those cues, which takes some of the pressure off of us as parents. You know, we don't have to be saying, okay, now it's time to do this next, because they're starting to learn the process themselves and they have those visual reminders. That's great. Thank you, Allie. And so since we're talking a little bit about rituals and how to work those in, I'd like to spend a little bit of time too on how we can do rituals, you know, that are maybe just very kind of adding in some extra connection in there. So Allie talked about great things like, you know, reading stories and having a cuddle. Maybe that's the way that you end each day. You know, maybe you decide that you start each morning with something that kind of refills both your cups. So later on in this session, and then in our third discussion, a few weeks from now, when we talk about self-care, we'll talk a lot about filling our cups, you know, finding the things that fulfill us, that revitalize us. And, you know, those are really important to work in as well, you know, because we really want to make sure that each person has the energy and, you know, the emotional care that they need to get through the day. Do you mind, Allie, just sharing maybe one or two of those kind of self-care rituals that you can work in, either
Sure.
for the adult or for the child?
Yeah, how about some ideas you could do the both of you together? Because I think
Great.
a lot of times I hear from families, I really want to do self-care, but it's impossible to do it by myself.
How do I
So,
find the time?
right. So
Yeah.
something that you could do with your child is just taking a deep breath. It's super simple, but little kids love to do things that their parents are doing. So if they see that you're doing something that looks really fun, they might want to join in with you. So just a deep breath, and you can make it fun. You can pretend you have a birthday candle and you're going to blow out the birthday candle. So you're breathing in and you're blowing it out together. It's the exhale, the long exhale, that's going to really be the recharge, the reset for you both. So taking deep breaths with your kiddos, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, that's a great self-care thing that you both can do together. I think nature is a huge fill your cup up for a lot of people. So maybe just stepping outside in the morning, depending on the weather, bundling up even, you could have your coffee or your tea out there, and your little one can sit out there with you and have some water, or maybe you could have your breakfast on the outside on the porch. I mean, it just depends on your situation, but little things like that can fill your cup up. So getting outside and enjoying nature with your kiddo. It could be a walk together, of course, too. Those are some good self-care things to do. Movement. I know movement is huge self-care for so many people, and especially little ones. They love to move. So dance party is my most favorite self-care. Put on some music and dance with your little ones. They're going to be moving. You're going to be moving. You can even lift them up for some weights and get more exercise in, and you're both getting self-care in. So those are some simple self-care things that you can do with your little one.
Those are wonderful. Thank you, Allie. So these kind of guidelines that we've been talking about are really general, right? Because we know that, like so many things in parenting, what works best for you in your family is going to look different than somebody else, you know? So we can't come in and say, this is the one magic routine that everyone should follow and it makes everything flow, because, you know, you're an individual, your child is an individual, you have a unique relationship, you know, in your family, there's all sorts of dynamics that you have to consider in finding what's best for you. And so we really want to encourage you to, you know, listen to your gut and think about what it is, you know, that's best for you and your family, even if maybe it looks different from someone else's, you know, that's great. It's going to be the right routine for you if it's right for you. So now we'll get into some more specific questions. We had some pre-submitted questions that we'll spend a little time on now. And then if there's questions from families participating, then we're happy to answer those too. So the first question, Allie, I'm going to have you help with this one. How do you even do a routine when a parent's working hours vary so much? Maybe they're spending one day working at home and one day working, you know, outside of the home. Maybe some days the work time is really short and sometimes it's really long. There's just so much that can vary, right? So where do you even start?
Mm-hmm. So again, I would say just keeping it simple, not having like 6 things in your little routine ritual that you do. Maybe you only do 1 or 2 things. If things are changing up a lot. I think as long as you are doing that same thing every time, you don't have to do it at the exact same time. Maybe you're working till 6 o'clock one night, another night maybe you're working till 7 o'clock, but you can still do that same ritual. Just keep it simple. Maybe your ritual every single night, to be realistic for someone whose work schedule is changing, is we always read a book before we go to bed. And then we go to bed. I mean, that is simple, but it's something that your child can rely on, and they know, okay, we're reading a book and now we're going to go to sleep. So you can keep it super simple like that to make sure that you can fit it all in.
Yeah. And that's great because, you know, what's most important are those simple things. It's that connection time, you know, it's great, you know, to have dinners together as a family, but especially with the way, you know, flexible schedules are, that doesn't always work. And so maybe you're not all sitting down to a meal together each night, but you have that story at the end of the night. And that's the way that you wrap up each day. That's a really nice bonding moment that they can look forward to and rely on consistently. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's perfect. The next question I really love, just for lots of reasons. How did dessert every night become a thing? So sometimes we find ourselves creating these routines or these habits that were not the routines we set out to create. Sometimes we get into just patterns of behavior with our children, you know, these cycles start and they kind of grow and grow, and suddenly it's like this thing that's happening that we're all doing all of, you know, consistently without necessarily intending to do so. So opportunities like this are a great chance to kind of reflect. You know, sometimes we have to pause and do a little bit of reflection as a parent about, do I want to make this a thing? You know, we know that we can change habits. We know that we can make, you know, even big changes, but that it takes a little bit of effort to do so. And sometimes it's worth the effort and sometimes it's not. So maybe, you know, for this parent, I would say to think about, is this the hill that you want to like make the last stand on? You know, is this kind of the battle that you want to fight with your child? And if it is, that's fine. And if it's not, that's totally fine too. Again, you know, different things are going to work for different families. If dessert every night has become a thing that's adding more stress and more pressure, you know, more fights to your life with your child, you know, to that evening time, and you wanted to make a change, you can kind of insert a new activity into the routine. You know, so if you just think about it and you notice when the question is coming up, you know, when the child is voicing that expectation, and you can kind of try to catch the wave beforehand and think of another activity, you know, some sort of replacement that they'll also enjoy. And I love the suggestion of a dance party because that's a great one for adults and for kids. So many kids love the dance party. So maybe, yeah, maybe they love that, or maybe they love an evening walk, or, you know, going outside and playing a quick game of soccer or a tag or something, you know. And so as you're wrapping up dinner, kind of before they get a chance to even ask the question, let them know it's going to be different. Say, hey, tonight we're going to have a dance party. Tonight we're going to go play soccer. Tonight we're going to do, you know, whatever the replacement is that you've decided. And then just launch right into it. And sometimes, you know, we can catch them and they don't even really notice. Eventually, you know, they'll probably ask either that night or a different night, hey, what about dessert? Don't we do dessert after dinner? Oh yeah, sometimes we do, but not, now we're doing this instead. This is what we're doing now. And it doesn't have to be a battle. It doesn't have to be, you know, I'm deciding this and you have to listen to me. It's just, this is what we're doing. You know, we can keep it very, yeah, again, very simple and just no nonsense, not putting a lot of our emotional energy into it. And often they'll respond to that, you know, quite well. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that, Allie?
I was just gonna say, I love that a parent asked that, because that's a great example of how our routines can be flexible. They don't have to be in stone. They definitely can change over time. They're gonna follow what's working and what's not working for your family. So that's a great example of how you could change up your routine because it's just not working.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, you know, just knowing, yeah, part of routines is just knowing that they're going to change, you know, for all sorts of reasons, and that's, you know, life has changed, and that, you know, can bring some new challenges, of course, but there's also a lot of joy in that flexibility. So let's talk a little bit more about adjusting routines. How would you adjust a routine like establishing an earlier bedtime? Do you want to take that one, Allie?
Yeah, sure. So I think, you know, you're going to follow your child's temperament, your child's activity level, of course, with a lot of these questions. But for this one, I would say if you're wanting to make bedtime earlier, maybe your day, on the day that you decide you're going to try this, maybe your day with your child is going to have a few dance parties. I don't know. Maybe you need to have a lot of activities where they are getting a lot of that energy out. They're using a lot of energy. I think something that's going to make them pretty tired. So having a pretty good active day could be helpful for that. I think also trying to get up a little bit earlier than you normally do might be helpful for trying to adjust a bedtime, because if you get up earlier, then they're going to be tired and want to go down. So if you're getting up a little bit earlier, and I don't mean like a whole hour earlier, maybe it's going to be gradual, maybe it's going to be only 30 minutes earlier, or maybe it's only going to be 10. I mean, it depends on your family, right, and your child, but gradually trying to adjust something instead of just full on doing it. It might take a few days, it might take a week. So maybe getting up a little bit earlier, maybe making nap time a little bit earlier than usual, maybe only 20 minutes earlier. So that time, by the time that bedtime comes around, they're pretty tired because things have shifted a little bit. And of course, again, that activity is going to help with getting to bed a little bit earlier. So those are some things just to try.
Yeah, those are great. And I love the suggestion of kind of having the idea in mind of where you want to get them and taking gradual steps to get there. Because anytime that there's a really big adjustment, it's going to be harder, right? And so just kind of sliding it up a little bit at a time is great. And it's so tough this time of year because it's light later in the evening, you know, and so our children naturally are wanting to just stay up, and you know, especially the children who are a little bit older and are spending a lot of time outside, it's still light out. Why would I go to bed now? You know, it looks like it's still time to be, you know, going on a hike or running around playing. And so it takes a little adjustment for sure.
Yeah, and one
you
thing
have to think about the environment.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to mention too, just going with all the things that we have been talking about, a lot of times young children too like that little heads up of what's going to happen. So in just a few more minutes, we're going to start getting ready for bed. In a few more minutes, we're going to brush teeth. Okay, you've got like 2 or 3 more minutes to finish playing, and then we're going to go to sleep. A lot of times giving them that heads up about it is really helpful for them to be ready instead of the transition just being so quick.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's nice for them to have a little bit of warning. And sometimes, you know, especially if you have a child who really needs a lot of control, you can let them know, hey, it's almost time. Do you want 2 more minutes or 3 more minutes? How many more minutes would you like? And when they're little and they only know a few numbers, usually it's like 1 or 2. And then as they get older, it's like, I would like 400 minutes. And then you need to readjust the way that you're asking it a little bit. But that can be a nice way to let them know what's coming and to let them have a little bit of control.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, we have another pre-submitted question, but I also want to make sure that we have time for questions from those who are participating today. So I'll give our participants just a minute to think about that. If you'd like to either type a question into the chat feature, or if you want to unmute yourself, we're happy to answer a question. And I'll just check our chat box real quick and make sure. All right, well, feel free to jump in if anyone does have a question. But our last question, a question about biting. A grandson who bites his sister. Oh. So there's probably a lot of things going on there. Biting can come from a desire to play and interact. Sometimes it's fun, and that's a way to engage someone. And when you don't have other skills to do that, sometimes it's from frustration, especially if they don't feel listened to or feel like their space is being respected. Sometimes it's a sensory thing where they just are feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated and just need to kind of squeeze or chomp down on something. And unfortunately, sometimes the sister is who's close by. So yeah, depending on where it comes from, you're going to approach it a little bit differently. Lynn, do you want to share a little bit more about the situation?
It's usually when he's mad.
Okay.
Although it could be for other random things, as you've mentioned.
Yeah, so it sounds like he's kind of built this as, this is his way that he lets off some steam and that he, gets his point across. Allie, do you want to jump in?
I've had so much experience in my Montessori classrooms with little biters. So first, I think I would do some reflective listening. Oh, you seem really upset. Here, you can bite this instead. So we would use like little washcloths, have some rolled washcloths close by, so when we knew we had some biters around, or something similar that they can bite on. So acknowledging that, oh, I see you're upset, and here, you can bite this instead. Ouch, that hurts your sister when you bite her, but here, you can bite this. So letting them know that you see they're upset, putting words, because they're learning language, they're learning about feelings. So I see you're really angry right now, letting them hear that word. Also letting them know, ouch, that hurts your sister. Biting people hurts, and letting them get that need out, but you can bite this. Here, bite this washcloth. Some ideas.
Yeah, giving them that language is great, and that outlet, because they've already established that that's a way that they're getting a need met, and so having a way to channel that is really helpful. And then thinking about what it is that he's trying to communicate. So how can he express that he's angry in other ways? And other in families, people will decide kind of what they want their family culture to look like. Is it going to be stomping or hitting a pillow? Is it going to be taking deep breaths? What should he do when he has that feeling, right? Because there's no bad feelings. We know that all feelings are okay. He's going to feel all sorts of things, of course, right? Because all of us do, and especially 2-year-olds. They feel everything so intensely, and so thinking about how he can express it, and then letting him know, that expectation. So if for example, they decide that they want him to stomp when he's angry. When you're really mad, you can stomp your feet, and you practice what that looks like, and practice outside of the moment. We want to build that muscle memory up, because in the moment when anyone's upset, it's hard for us to think of the right thing to do. What we're relying on is that kind of instinctive muscle memory. And so the more that he practices it outside the moment, the more consistently he'll be able to draw up knowing what to do in the moment when he's upset.
Yeah, and
That's really helpful.
I'd like to add too, telling them what they can do. So you can say, when you're done with that toy, can I have it? You can help give them the words. Did you want to say, can I please have that when you're finished? Or I want to turn. Also giving them that language of what they should be doing instead of biting after you've acknowledged the feelings, gotten the need met, but you can say, I would like a turn.
That's great. He has very few words, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
giving them those words will help for the brain to wire that, oh, this is what, when I do have my words, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
And we can find ways, for them to ask in other, nonverbal ways as well, especially for children who, there's a huge spectrum of language development, right? And so sometimes, especially if language is coming a little bit later, there's a really big added layer of frustration because there's so much that they want to say. And so we want them to be able to have ways to ask that don't rely on skills that they don't have yet. We want to give them both those pieces. So he has a way to ask in the moment, and he's building that foundation for when his language does come, like Ali was saying.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Lynn. Any others before we wrap up? All right. Well, the last thing that I wanted to spend just a quick minute on, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, was recognizing what is working in your family. And so I would encourage everyone to just take a little bit of time to think about what it is that is going well, what routines, are flowing really smoothly, what, great way you're working with other adults in your life, that your child's supporting you, that you're supporting your child. Just recognize what's going well in your day and to vocalize it. Because there's a lot of power in saying it out loud. Even if you're just saying it out loud to yourself in an empty room, that's great. It's better than keeping it inside. Something about the process of saying it out loud and hearing ourselves say it is really beneficial. And if there's, someone who's supporting you in your life, whether it's a partner or a parent or a friend, vocalizing that to them, and recognizing that and kind of sharing that gratitude is such a wonderful thing, just in those relationships. And let your children know too, it works really well. Like when we all help in the morning, this is going so well, you've been putting your pants on all by yourself, and that's such a big help to me. We want to give them that verbal feedback as well. And, the more that we're putting our attention and vocalizing the things that are going well, putting that attention on the positive, the more of that we tend to see. Anything else, Ali, that you want to add before we wrap up?
I just love that you ended it with that. We set the tone a lot of the times for the day for our children. So yeah, setting the tone, encouraging words, I think is a wonderful way to start your day and to incorporate that into your routines, keeping encouraging words going throughout the day. So it's great.
Great. Well, thank you all so much again for being here and for being part of this. And we'll be back 2 Mondays from now to talk about power struggles. So that'll be June 15th.